I don't feel no pain no more.
Yes, after numerous requests put into the comments section, today I will be reviewing The Plague Dogs. Oh boy. Plague Dogs is a 1982 animated film which follows the journey of two dogs who have recently broken out of an animal testing facility and now have to survive out in the Lake District area as they search for a new home. Not only having to deal with the natural elements like finding food and surviving the weather, but also having to run from the humans who are hunting them down for suspicion that the dogs are carrying the bubonic plague. Oh, this is going to be a really upbeat film, I can tell. The film is based on the 1977 book also titled The Plague Dogs, which was originally written by Richard Adams. And yes, this is the same guy who wrote the original book of Watership Down. Not only that, but this film is also directed by Martin Rosen, who, yes, was the man who also directed the Watership Down film. But unlike Watership Down, which got a U rating, this film was actually given a PG rating by the BBFC. And I'm going to warn you now, despite this film being an animated film with a PG rating, this is by no means a kid-friendly or even family fun film. There are graphic scenes of blood and violence, but also a lot of heavy themes revolving around animal cruelty, which involve quite a few moments which some viewers may find uncomfortable to watch. So with that in mind, let's tell our therapist to clear his calendar as we sit down to watch The Plague Dogs. The first thing I notice is that even as the opening credits roll, we're presented with an eerie silence, with only the faint sound of splashing water in the background. The scene opens to show us a dog who is swimming in some sort of container. Well, it's less than 3 minutes in the film and I'm already becoming emotionally traumatized. So let's keep watching. The dog in the container is one of our main characters, Ralph. Ralph is a mixed Labrador who is one of the many animals who are being tested on in the animal research facility. From what we gather from the researchers' dialogue, it seems they were testing how long Ralph would swim for before giving up to drown. Particularly noting that he lasts longer when he has been rescued before, indicating that when something has hope of being rescued, it will battle on for much longer. And yes, this is actually based on real life experiments that were carried out on lab rats. After Ralph has recovered and been put back into his cage, he starts talking to a small terrier next to him named Snitter. Snitter has also been experimented on, but seems that his experimentation involves surgery on the brain. We never find out exactly what the surgery involved, but it's briefly mentioned that it had something to do with them mixing up his objective and subjective part of his mind, which causes him to hallucinate, lose train of thought, and even have seizures. Snitter notices that Ralph's cage hasn't been shut properly, and tells him that this is their opportunity to break out of the lab and become free. Though initially hesitant, Ralph agrees and the two begin to explore the lab to find a way out. As the dogs are exploring the lab, there's a real horror movie feel to this scene. There's no music being played, dialogue is spoken very quietly and softly, and we're presented with a lot of creepy imagery. And then when noise is heard, it comes across as very loud, very sharp, and very sudden. Watching this honestly feels like I'm playing one of those indie horror games. Eventually the two dogs manage to escape out the vent in the incinerator, and run out to explore the local area. It's revealed that Snitter did actually used to have a kind human owner before being put into the lab, but unfortunately his owner got run over and killed as he actually tried to save Snitter from being hit by the very vehicle. This means Snitter has seen the potential good in humans, and says that he and Ralph just need to find a new master and everything will be okay. Ralph, however, we assume has lived much of his life in the research lab, as he refers to all humans being whitecoats, and that there's no such thing as a good human. They attempt to look round the local town, but get scared off when they mistake a local butcher for a scientist due to the white coat he was wearing. So the two now vouch that they must become wild animals in order to survive out in the wilderness.
But we'll have to change.
Change? Change to what?
To what we used to be.
real animals, wild animals.
They soon meet a local fox named Todd. No, not that Todd, who offers to make a deal with the two dogs. He will show them how to survive out in the wild in exchange for a share of their food. Over the next couple of weeks, they successfully start bringing down sheep and breaking into chicken pens. This, however, starts to attract the attention of the local farmers, who now set out to hunt the dogs. So the two dogs and Todd are now forced to flee their old hiding spot. Whilst out on the run, Snitter comes across a local farmer, but unlike the others, this guy seems like a genuinely nice person who wants to offer Snitter a home. So what happens next?
Come on, up we go.
It just comes out of completely nowhere, and it's so graphic as well. Not only do we see a close-up of the guy covering his blood-ridden face, but we also get this creepy music. And what hurts most is that this looked like it was the only chance the dogs had of achieving a happy ending. The nice guy could adopt Snitter. Snitter would go get Ralph, so the guy could adopt him too. They finally get their kind master and live in a cozy cottage, whilst also remembering to take out spare scraps of food for Todd, and it'll all be happily ever after. But no, not with this film. It all blows up in their face, quite literally, not only adding to Snitter's guilt, who he already blamed himself for the death of his old master, but now also means the situation has escalated as the police get involved and blame the dogs for the murder of the local man. As word gets out about the murder of stray dogs, the media begins questioning the animal research lab as to whether it was one of their strays, and word then also gets out that the research lab was doing testing with the bubonic plague, so now everyone also believes that the dogs must have had the plague too. Roll credits. So now all the locals are looking to hunt these dogs down. One nearly manages to get a kill on Ralph, but is stopped by Todd. This also leads to the man falling to his death off a cliff, and when the rescuers find the man's body, they find that the dogs have eaten part of his flesh. And so now, the situation is brought to a national level, as the army is now brought in to hunt down the dogs. Todd offers to distract the army dogs so Ralph and Snitter can make a run for it. Ralph and Snitter manage to escape onto the train, but Todd, however, is presumably killed. Ralph and Snitter don't remain hidden for long, and are soon being chased onto the beach with the army closing in on them. Snitter says that he can see a small island in the distance, and so the pair jump into the ocean to try and reach it, whilst the Stormtrooper AIM-assisted army try to shoot them out of the water. Soon the dogs find themselves swimming into some fog and manage to lose sight of the army, but now also can't see the island. And Snitter even begins to wonder if he even saw the island at all, or if it was just another hallucination. Snitter is now on the verge of giving up, but Ralph says that he can see the island and tells him not to give up. The final shot we see of the two dogs is them slowly swimming off into the fog before it cuts to credits. This final shot in the film is actually a callback to the first shot in the film, complete silence with only the sound of water splashing, and Ralph offering Snitter hope that he can see the island, because as the experiment in the first scene showed us, if a dog has hope, it will carry on swimming for much longer. Whew. So, what are my thoughts? Honestly, this is one of the most depressing animated films I have ever watched. It has a very dark tone throughout the film, and with little moments of comedy, and even when there is comedic moment thrown in, it's usually very subtle. The animation is really good quality, definitely more refined and improved upon from Watership Down. The animals are drawn incredibly realistically and have very natural and restricted movement. You don't get exaggerated cartoony facial expressions, nor do you get anthropomorphic movement. And I believe that this was intentionally done to keep this film as grounded to reality as possible, so it's easier for us the audience to connect it to the real world where a lot of the controversial testing on animals is actually taking place. The detailed animation also leads to some disturbing close-up shots, such as the monkey we keep seeing in the test lab throughout the film. I also noted how they try to avoid showing any of the human faces, and generally we only see the humans from the waist down. I presume this is done so we can see the world through more of the animal's perspective, something that's also done quite a lot in kids shows to highlight the world from the child's perspective. Like Watership Down, there is also highly detailed watercolour backgrounds, but the palette seems much darker and much more bleached, which of course adds to the film's dark tone. The music also contributes a lot to the feel of this film. As I mentioned earlier, there are long moments in this film that actually have little to no soundtrack. There is the odd scene where the music picks up when there's more action going on, whether it be a jazzy track when the dogs are lightheartedly chasing some ducks, or a more intense orchestral score as the dogs are running from the army. Now let's have a closer look at the characters, and by characters I mean the only three that we really see in the entire film, and that is the two dogs and the fox. We'll start with Ralph. Ralph, who we presume has spent his whole life in the testing facility, has a very cynical view of the world, which you would expect. He's never experienced anything other than the cruelty he suffered in the research lab, and is also very skeptical when told that there is a better world out there, even being hesitant to escape the research lab when he gets the opportunity. It leads him being very mistrustful to all humans and other animals they encounter on their journey. But despite his seemingly cold nature, he does have a softer and more caring role when it comes to Snitter, comforting him in times of stress and risking his life to save Snitter from any danger. As for Snitter, he, unlike Ralph, did once have a caring owner who he lived a pleasant life with. Unfortunately, his owner ends up getting run over, and Snitter somehow wound up in the research lab where they began to do some experimenting on his brain. This leads to Snitter having hallucinations and moments of seizure, which can actually be very difficult to watch at times.
The flies in my head, they keep buzzing. Feels like smoke.
Despite everything he's been through, unlike Ralph, Snitter has a very optimistic view of the world, feeling determined that he and Ralph will find a caring master out there and will get their happy ending. And finally, Todd. Todd is a character who, for much of the film, you can't really put a finger on. Initially, Todd comes across as a very sly and devious character. Being a wild animal, he can come across as very selfish, such as wandering off to eat a nest of chicken eggs for himself without telling Ralph or Snitter. And it's not until near the end you quite know what his motives are, whether he actually cares about Ralph and Snitter, or is he purely using them as a means to get food. There were a couple of negatives I had with this film though. First up is that there's some scenes in the movie where we hear the humans discussing what's going on about the missing dog situation, but they're never shown actually having the discussion. Instead, we just get various shots of the animals walking across the Lake District. I guess this was done to show the story more from the animal's perspective, and the narration was added on to explain to the audience what was going on, but this sometimes leads to a bit of confusion as to who's talking, when we're hearing all this dialogue going on, but we're just seeing the animals on screen. And second of all, I did feel that this film sometimes went a bit too dark for the sake of going dark, prime example being the scene where the farmer gets shot in the face. It just felt so unnecessary and seemed like it was put in there just for the pure shock factor. And it really lowers the tone of the film, as that was the only chance the dogs had to finding a loving home. If they were going to include a bloody scene like that, couldn't they at least have it happen to someone who was more deserving of it? Like one of the whitecoats getting shot in the face, for example? But aside from that, this is a well executed, emotionally driven film. It highlights animal cruelty, has heartwarming moments between the main characters, and really makes you root for them. And the open ending really does leave it down to you to decide the dog's fate. So I'm sure some of you are also wanting to know, how do I compare this film to its older sibling, Watership Down? To be honest, I don't think this film is as violent or as bloody as Watership Down, aside from that one scene. There really isn't that much in this film to get squeamish at. But where Plague Dogs does leave its impact is more in the psychological feel you get from it. Watership Down you look at and go, oh no, those little bunnies are attacking each other and there's blood everywhere. Whereas with Plague Dogs it's more like, that dog has a fear of water, due to the constant drowning he's been subjected to. Oh, that dog's talking funny and having seizures, because of all the unethical surgery they performed on his brain. Oh look, that monkey's rocking back and forth in despair, because of all the inhumane experimentation that's been done to it. And unlike Watership Down, this film doesn't give you a happy ending. In Watership Down, the rabbits do eventually get their reward of finding a new den and starting a life of their own, and continue to live it out in peace and harmony. With Plague Dogs, however, the ending is left open. We don't see them make it to the island. We don't even know if they saw the island. Maybe Snitter did imagine it. Maybe Ralph just lied about seeing the island in order to give Snitter hope to keep him swimming on. We do see an island shown in the distance of the closing credits, but I kinda saw the island as being a metaphor for the afterlife, and that once the dogs reach the island, their suffering would have finally ended and they find peace. But that's the thing with an open-ended film, it's all down to your personal interpretation. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching my review of Plague Dogs, and thank you to those who recommended it in the comments section. Do leave a like if you liked what you saw, and leave a comment below as to what you thought of Plague Dogs, and also what you'd like me to review in future. And do remember to subscribe, as we'll be looking into more reviews into the darker side of animation. But until the next one guys, take care.